The Indiana Fever had finally done it. After years of heartbreak, years of struggle, and years of waiting, they secured a playoff win that electrified their fan base. Lexie Hull's game-saving steal, Kelsey Mitchell's composure, and Aaliyah Boston's steady dominance should have been the headlines. It should have been about resilience, about triumph, about a team overcoming injuries and adversity to rise when it mattered most. But instead, the spotlight was stolen by a bizarre, unnecessary confrontation that turned a night of celebration into another controversy. For the WNBA, at the center of it stood Sophie Cunningham. Injured, braced, and unfairly targeted by league security, Sophie wasn't playing. She wasn't dressed in uniform, wasn't charging onto the floor, wasn't causing a scene. She was standing at midcourt in her bulky leg brace, watching her team, showing the same passion that has defined her career. Yet somehow, she became the subject of an aggressive encounter with a league-hired security guard who treated her like a trespasser rather than a member of the Fever family. The moment was surreal. This wasn't enforcement of rules. This was humiliation. Sophie, calm but firm, didn't flinch. She didn't back down. She held her ground as the cameras caught her glare, a look every fan of hers recognized instantly. That's the glare that says, "Really? This is what you're doing right now?" The image is spread across social media in minutes. Clips of Sophie being confronted by security went viral, and the reaction was swift and loud. Fans weren't angry at Sophie. They were outraged for her. The common consensus was simple. This was harassment disguised as enforcement. Sophie wasn't storming the court. She was simply doing what any teammate does when a player goes down, standing nearby, waiting, making sure her people were okay. Odyssey Sims had gone down holding her shoulder, and naturally, Sophie and others had taken a step closer. That's what teammates do. Injured or not, Sophie had every right to be there, and yet she was treated like a threat. Fans online pointed out the optics. Sophie, visibly hurt, unable to sprint if she tried, stood face to face with a security guard who seemed determined to escalate something that didn't exist. Her reaction wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't aggression. It was controlled defiance. She refused to move because she didn't need to. That single choice sparked the viral wave. Hashtags like #FreeSophie and #WNBAExposed began trending within hours. Fans could see the double standard. They could feel the hypocrisy. And they weren't shy about calling it out. Because this wasn't just about one guard with a power complex. It felt like part of a bigger pattern, one fans have watched unfold all season. Sophie Cunningham has long been painted as the league's villain. She's unapologetic, outspoken, confident, and unwilling to play the smiling role the league prefers. Rival fans boo her. Commentators frame her as trouble, and now, even league staff seem to treat her differently. The irony, of course, is that Sophie is exactly the kind of figure who keeps the WNBA relevant. Her clips trend constantly. Her name lights up social media. She drives engagement. She has a base of passionate fans who defend her fiercely. But instead of leaning into that energy, the league has often positioned her as a problem. That's why fans saw this incident for what it was: selective treatment. Because if this had been Angel Reese or Paige Buchers in Sophie's spot, the narrative would have been completely different. It would have been called leadership, passion, or heart. But Sophie Cunningham in a brace standing her ground? Suddenly, it's misconduct. The double standard was glaring, and fans made sure the WNBA heard about it. The Fever's playoff win should have been the only story. This team, missing Caitlin Clark, and several other rotation pieces like Sydney Colson and Sophie herself, had pulled off the improbable. It was grit. It was resilience. It was the stuff of headlines. Instead, the dominant image of the night became Sophie Cunningham glaring down a security guard at midcourt. The fact that this overshadowed Lexie Hull's steal and the Fever's collective triumph, it's more than frustrating, it was embarrassing. For fans, it was another example of the league sabotaging its own momentum. And this isn't the first time. The WNBA has shown a troubling history of failing to protect players who don't fit its mold. Caitlin Clark has taken harder fouls than anyone in the league since her rookie year, shoved and hacked repeatedly, while refs swallow their whistles. Sophie has been branded a villain for years, even when her only crime was competing hard. Fans see it. They connect the dots. And every time something like this happens, it erodes confidence in league leadership. The silence from the top didn't help either. When Dejanay Carrington had issues with refs, the league rushed to defend her. The Players Association spoke up. Cheryl Swoops even demanded accountability. But when Sophie Cunningham was the target, crickets. No defense, no acknowledgement, no accountability. The contrast wasn't lost on fans. They weren't just outraged at the incident, they were outraged at the selective outrage. And Sophie, for her part, handled it like she always does. With poise, with fire. With a little humor, she didn't hand the league ammunition. She didn't melt down in front of the cameras. She stood her ground, refused to be bullied, and later brushed it off with her trademark blend of grit and wit. "The league is so mad that we won because we're literally not supposed to be here at all," she said, turning the narrative back to her team. That's Sophie. She knows when to glare, when to laugh, and when to remind people that no amount of manufactured drama can take away from the Fever's heart, and that's why fans love her. She's real. She's unfiltered. She's everything the WNBA claims it wants, but doesn't seem to know how to handle. Her popularity only grows every time they try to diminish her. Fans aren't blind. They see the league's selective promotion, the way marketing pushes some stars while sidelining others. They notice that Sophie rarely appears in promos, despite constantly trending. They notice how she's called the villain for things other players get praised for. They notice, and they're tired of it. The Fever's playoff win should have been a moment of triumph. Instead, it became another case study in how the WNBA trips over its own feet. The league had an opportunity to celebrate Hull's, steal Boston's leadership, and Mitchell's clutch plays. Instead, it went viral for a security guard treating Sophie Cunningham like a trespasser. That's not growth. That's collapse disguised as buzz. And yet, as frustrating as it was, fans turned the narrative on its head. Sophie became the hero, the underdog standing tall against an overzealous system. The more the league tried to minimize her, the stronger her base grew. The backlash wasn't dying down, it was building. Clips, memes, and tweets only added fuel to the fire. Sophie, limping in her brace, refusing to move, became the symbol of resistance against a league that too often sidelines its most authentic voices. The question now isn't whether Sophie Cunningham was wronged. The people have already decided she was. The real question is whether the WNBA will ever learn. Will it continue to undermine its stars with selective enforcement and bad optics? Or will it finally realize that players like Sophie and Caitlin Clark aren't problems, they're the solution? Because until that shift happens, nights like this will continue to be remembered not for the basketball,